first of all, AI is a lot bigger than Sam Altman. One of the things that happens is that if you just sort of sit back in your office in Washington or even in Palo Alto and you wait and see who comes to you, you only get a slice of the world.
Welcome to the very first special episode of the AI Download. This is so exciting. I'm your host, Shira Lazar. I've been covering social media and digital culture trends for 2 decades, and now I'm diving into the AI revolution because, AI is moving fast. And if you're not keeping up, you're falling behind. So that's why we're here, to break it down, make it digestible, and keep you ahead of the curve. Thanks again to our sponsor, Hivelighter, the AI-powered tool that supercharges your reading and research with personalized insights. Check them out because we would not be able to do this without them. Now, today, we've got a powerhouse guest to get us going. You are in for such a special treat. Arati Prabhakar, who, by the way, just spent the last few years advising the President of the United States on science and tech. She's led DARPA, shaped AI policy, and played a key role in Biden's 2023 executive order on AI. She's basically a badass, okay? If there's anyone who can help us understand where AI is headed and what it means for you, it is her. So we get into the future of AI regulation, to billion-dollar private investments, job shifts, and even the role of AI in trust and safety online. We are diving into it all. So here it is.
Hi, Shira. I'm really glad to get to do this with you. AI, you're so right. It's moving fast. And it's in all of our lives already, and we've got to get it right. And if we can get it right, it's going to be a very good thing, but we got a lot of work to do. So it's wonderful that you're reaching out to such a huge community. I'm really, really pleased about that.
Thank you. And I actually saw you last year at the first ever Creator Economy Summit at the White House. So full circle right now here virtually, though. You just left the White House, though, in January. So first off, I want to do a little check-in. How are you doing? What's life like post-administration?
Well, a lot has happened since you were at the White House. A lot has happened. In my life, I turned in my assets and said goodbye to the White House on the morning of January 20th. And after that, I moved out of my rental apartment in Washington, D.C., and I flew home to Palo Alto, which is my home, and this is where I am now. And I'll tell you, first of all, I'm really happy to be home with my husband and my family and friends. It's always good to be home. I'm really, really happy that I got to spend these last couple of years in the Biden White House. And we're going to talk about AI. That's an area where we got a lot done to get us on the right course. But we also worked on the President and the First Lady's cancer moonshot. We've made a real difference for how cancer turns out in the decades ahead. We worked on climate, and we worked on the whole innovation system that's all about how does this country build its future? And that's my great passion. So I'm really happy that I got to do all of that work. And I came home, and I had a whole bunch of things I wanted to work on that were about building this, what's been a long bipartisan consensus about the fact that when we pull together, this country does huge things. And I really wanted to tell those stories. I still want to tell those stories. But we have a few things going on in our country right now that demand our immediate attention. And so I think this crisis that we're in, it's going to affect AI, but it's going to affect everything in our lives. So it's been a tumultuous few weeks.
You think? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we all have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, a lot to unpack. And we could go down so many rabbit holes with that, unfortunately. But we're here to talk about AI, of course. And by the way, thank you for your work. Thank you for the service and for pushing so many important things ahead. And I hope we don't lose track of that. Right? I just wanted to put that out there.
That's really nice of you. Thank you. No, it's such a privilege, right? Everyone I know who serves in government just feels like it's a gift to get to do this work for the country. That's very much how I've always felt.
So, again, there's a lot going on in my head right now as you say that. And I'm like trying not to look at X right now and social media. I'm focused here on our conversation. So that's because I could get triggered right now, and a lot of people, but let's keep this conversation where it is, but there is a lot to tackle, right? So let's start where you were. So you helped shape President Biden's 2023 executive order, as I mentioned, on safe, secure, and trustworthy AI. which tackled both AI harms and opportunities. It also brought over 200 very talented people into government to speed up effective federal use of AI, all very important things. So when you left, where did you feel we were as a country in terms of AI governance and innovation? And what does that actually even mean to you? Because those are a lot of buzzwords, you could say, as well.
Yeah, that's a huge topic to unpack. And the short answer is I felt great about the direction that we had aimed at, the course that we had set for the country. And when America sets a course, it's setting a course for the world. So I thought that was actually very important. And it was also clear to me that we're at the beginning of a long journey with AI, and there's a lot more work still to be done. So maybe let me tell you a little bit about where it started and then where I think we are. So I started at the White House as the President's Science and Technology Advisor in October of 2022. And in November of 2022 is when ChatGPT came out. And so, guess what I was spending all my time on all of a sudden? And I'll tell you, the thing that's so interesting to me is that, back in 2022, AI was already in our lives in all kinds of ways. And you might have thought about the fact that AI was behind the next thing that pops up in your social media feed. And you might have thought about search results or ads that you're seeing. You might not have thought about the fact that when you went to your airline to buy a ticket, that the particular price you got at that moment in time, that was driven by an AI algorithm. Or the fact that when you go to the doctor, often, the doctor or the hospital is giving you a diagnosis or a treatment that's based on an AI model. So now we've got this new generation, this generative AI era that bursts on the scene. And what happened at the White House is that President Biden and Vice President Harris said, look, this is a big deal. This is emerging as one of the most powerful technologies of our time. And we know what happens with powerful technologies. People use them for good and people use them for ill. And so what we need to do, the big we, the whole world, what we need to do is manage AI's risks so that we can seize its benefits. We want those benefits, but you can't have them if you don't manage the risks. And so those things have to ratchet up together. That's how it all started. A ton of actions happened. The very broad executive order, which is the president saying, under existing law, what are we going to do within the executive branch? Congress did a lot of work, did not pass legislation, but has still continued to work towards that. We worked globally with countries around the world, and we worked with the industry. So lots of different fronts of action and progress. But let me tell you what it means. Here's where I think we are. Today, we've done some very specific things have happened that change how you and I are interacting with AI. And I'll just give you some quick examples. So today, when you go to the bank and you ask for a mortgage, for example, almost always your bank is using an AI system to decide whether the answer is yes or no. Now, because of our Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, because of their work, you're now owed an explanation when you get a no. So instead of just, your dream of owning a house has disappeared into a black hole, now you know something that you can work on to get the credit that you need. Number one. And by the way, the CFPB, that exact organization is one of the things that Musk's Doge is in the process of killing off. So that's just a great example of what is protecting us today that we've got to pay attention to. Very different example. You go to the emergency room or you go to your doctor, and we want to see medicine use AI models to do a better job of diagnosing and then figuring out how to treat your disease. But if what those AI systems do is just distill the biases of the past, then that's not okay. I mean, one of the reasons that you are 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy if you're a black woman than if you're a white woman, 3 times more likely to die. One of the reasons is that we've just had incorrect practices and teachings in the medical profession for way too long that basically assume that black women didn't need treatment for pain or problems. I mean, that's just unacceptable. We're not going to live in a country that does that. So the Health and Human Services Department put a rule out that said, if you're going to use AI to diagnose or to come up with treatments for patients, first you have to make sure that it's not causing these kinds of problems. So, let's use it, let's get the efficiency, but let's get it right. And then a third example, one of the concerns is AI being used to defraud people because it can impersonate a business or a bank or a government agency. So the Federal Trade Commission said that under existing law, of course, it's already illegal to defraud people, but they made it clear that it's illegal under existing law to use an AI to impersonate a business or a government agency or a bank. So, these are really practical ways that the way we're interacting with AI in the world today is starting to get a little bit better. And again, so much more to do, but we got to start. And the reason I want to just say, the reason I think it's so important to get it on a good path and to have this stable foundation where we can trust AI is what I really want is a future where we use AI to go to the stars, where we solve some of our biggest, hardest problems. And that's possible if we can get this right.
Elon Musk might take that as actually reaching the stars right now or the planet.
Well,
but,
yeah, I have something different.
Yes, I know. And I hear that. And bias is such an important thing to touch on and trust. And I do want to know at the time, when we were building these initiatives and ChatGPT comes, even though AI has been around, but this becomes the mainstream, I guess, view of it, right? The entryway for a lot of people that didn't know about AI. Are you working with Sam Altman? Like, how well are you working with them? And are they into working with you and making a change? Because obviously Biden regulation versus Trump administration regulation is a different approach. And we talk about, does regulation Trump, not that Trump, but Trump innovation, or does it, is it better to have a non-regulated industry? Lots of questions there, but what is your take on all of that?
Yeah. Well, let me start with who's in the process, because I think that's really, really critical. And first of all, AI is a lot bigger than Sam Altman. I mean, when you listen to Sam, it doesn't sound like it, but the fact is AI is a lot bigger than Sam Altman. So we definitely heard from OpenAI, from Anthropic, the big tech companies. But that's not the only part of the community that we heard from. And, one of the things that happens is that if you just sort of sit back in your office in Washington or even in Palo Alto and you wait and see who comes to you, you only get a slice of the world. And it's really important that we did the work, and we definitely did the work to get out and to go visit startups and go talk to VC investors, not just in these big tech huge AI models, but this much bigger ecosystem that's bubbling as people are applying AI and solving problems with it. We got out and talked to universities, talked to people in the national labs, and saw what the research frontiers looked like. And when you do all of that, then all of that is such important input for shaping these policies, both for understanding where the dangers and risks might come from, and then actually figuring out, once you get that right, like how do we go big and solve some of the hardest, most interesting problems. So that was the process, both people that came to us, and there's a lot of lobbying that goes on, as you might imagine, but also making sure that we reached much farther out than just the people who came, inside the Beltway. And then I think, sure, this question you're asking, this is the question I got the most frequently. Basically, people would say, are you for AI or are you against it? Do you want to regulate it or do you want to innovate? And I'll tell you, my answer to that is yes, we absolutely have to manage the risks, and we absolutely have to use it to go do amazing, innovative things. But I think, when a lot of my colleagues in the innovation community, I think, are a little confused. They tend to sometimes think of anything that's a cool new gadget or technology or capability is inherently innovative. I'm not that interested until it's solving a problem for human beings that makes people's lives better. That's what real innovation is. And if you want to do that, then you got to tackle the problems that come with any advanced technology.
Yeah, I mean, I love that perspective, and it's so important because so much of what is happening right now it's a lot of noise, and as what you said, AI is not just Sam Altman, because it feels like it sometimes, these figureheads, and what the press does and media does, and clearly in some ways, and in many ways, it's working. And even I would say the past few months, Sam Altman, obviously Elon Musk, then you have the Mark Zuckerberg, and when I came up in social media, the government was not having these conversations, which is why I think that we're feeling in this next tech revolution, we want there to be that communication. So we set ourselves up to win. But the question is, are we doing that? Is that even happening, even though the communication is happening in a better way now? But is it the way we need it to
Yeah.
happen?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're making real progress. A couple of points very much to what you're saying. You know, this tour, when I picked up from California and moved to Washington to work for President Biden, the mood in the country about social media and tech was so very different than the mood in 2012 when I picked up and moved back to DC from California. That was in the Obama administration. That was to run DARPA, the Defense Department's central research agency, which literally actually created the internet back all the way back to the 60s. And, you know, in 2012, I, like many other people, had just gotten a social media account because of the Arab Spring, and you could see the potential for connecting people. And, you know, once you get on it and you're seeing your friends' kids' pictures and you're reconnecting with folks from high school, it was that magic moment of connectivity. And, you know, I think there was a lot of hope that that's what it was all about. Now, that didn't go away because I still love seeing, you know, those kids' pictures. But the part that has really come to the fore, unfortunately, is that, in fact, it comes with some problems, right? Like when you see kids who are being, you know, being bullied, when you see these horrible instances of people generating deepfake nudes today, now, you know, accelerated with AI, and just tormenting people and ruining people's lives. You know, there are some very dark sides, and so I think in my view, what happened is a decade ago, everyone was more, the country, not just politically, but the country was more in the mode of, it's great, let's try it, let's see what happens. And now we've seen enough problems with social media, along with the good part that came, that now when this huge AI surge is coming and it feels like it's amplifying everything that we saw on social media, the mood, I think there's a very widespread concern that we've got to get it right this time and that we can't just let it happen willy-nilly. So the mood's different. The work has got to get done. And I think that's something that spans a lot of communities, that sense that we've got to do something different this time. And then to your point, the engagement is happening in a way that I think is really, really healthy. At least it was in the Biden administration. Now, what we just don't know is what this administration is going to do. On
Yes.
AI, on day one, they they rescinded the Biden executive order, most of which had been implemented. They've made noise about what they're going to go do, but they don't seem to have, if they have a plan, they haven't shown it to anyone. They just now are asking for input from the community, which is always a good thing to do, but like that's sort of the start of a process. So we'll see what they actually do, while they're figuring out what they're going to say and do about AI, what they are actually doing is destroying a lot of our capability in government that is going to be necessary to get this right. We talked about going after the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is, you know, which comes to work every day to protect all of us as consumers in the world of finance. But that's only one example. And the chaos that has happened with this indiscriminate funding freeze and then the firings of so many people, what it's doing on the science and technology base that we taxpayers fund, you know, that is we the people making the investments for the future. And the chaotic destruction that's going on today is extraordinarily damaging.
Yeah, and it's concerning that there are a large amount of people that don't understand that or see that. Because then you talk to people on the ground and that have had the experience and that you can't debate that.
Yeah.
Like, come on, you know, extremely well educated, badass, like in leadership positions for how many years should, you know, at what point will this not be questioned, right? And the work that was started now to only regress. I mean, I'm happy that some of that work has gone through, but, you know, it's not surprising that an executive order would be probably canceled, you know, and thrown out from Trump. And in the midst of it, he announced this $500 billion private sector AI investment plan. So what is your take on this? Is this just lip service?
Well, look, that was a big announcement that they rolled out that was not about about American investment or, the United States government investment. They made a big show of it. Well, what was really striking, first of all, we are building data centers. The companies are pouring enormous amounts of money into building data centers. The amount of capital that has flowed to that already is extraordinary. The thing that really struck me is that immediately on the heels of that big announcement came the announcement from DeepSeek, this Chinese company, that I think was such an important reset for this industry, because the loud voices in AI have been OpenAI, Anthropic, the big tech companies. And, when you hear loud voices, you just need to take a minute and think about what's behind those loud voices. Well, these are the entities, these are the companies who have raised billions of dollars, put billions and billions of their own money to work, built around this one notion about AI, which is you have to just build the most massive compute. You have to compute and compute and compute and compute. And in fact, they made some great strides with the work that they've done, but it was always too narrow a view of this very fruitful, multidimensional technology. And what has happened in research, and we saw this coming in research, has now really blossomed with what DeepSeek has rolled out, which is something that's a very powerful AI model, very, very capable AI model, that did not require nearly the level of intensive compute. So I think that, number one, I think it got everyone's attention because it was a Chinese company. But what that is about is using smarts instead of brute force computing. And let me tell you, if it's about smarts, that is a game America can play and win. So I think it's great because it just reminded everyone of how rich the opportunity space is. And it doesn't always have to just be massive compute, that there's much more to it. But I also think it was a reminder for the people who have gotten a little too carried away with just that sort of a narrow view of AI.
So many things I want to respond to there. One, oh my God, where do I want to start?
Let's hear it.
No,
Let's
well,
hear
I think
it,
it just was the irony of the DeepSeek thing happening. It's from China with the whole TikTok thing happening. Like, it's all kind of one after the other. And then there's also a bit of the lack of trust in what DeepSeek claimed, like how much they actually put in, like as if they were trying to kind of, show it off against the US, a bit of a clear competition there in terms of leadership in the AI space. So there's that. And then there was also the fear now of using their platforms, right, and privacy. So what is your take on all of that? Because
let's
it's
talk
a
about all
layered
of
thing
that
happening all at once. And can it be separated? Because I do think it's kind of interesting that it's all happening at the same time.
Yeah, it is really multidimensional. So let me start with one piece of the puzzle, which is, I think DeepSeek got a lot of attention, but to me, what's really important is that it simply proves that there are many other ways to make big advances in AI, by being much more sophisticated and clever about the algorithms and the training approaches, rather than just more and more compute. And, that was not news to anyone who was really paying attention to what's going on in AI research, because there are researchers around the world and great researchers right here in the United States who are exploring these other methods for improving AI capabilities. And so at the end of the day, it's not just about a Chinese company. It's about the fact that it's a much broader landscape. But let me peel one more layer of the onion. So one of the really important distinctions between what the big tech platforms and OpenAI and Anthropic have done and what most of the rest of the industry has done, when you use ChatGPT, or if you're experiencing Google's AI when you do a search, those are models that those companies hold very, very close. They protect them very closely, and you can get access by interrogating the chatbot. There's a way for you to interact with it, but you don't get to see what the model looks like. And they did it for a bunch of business reasons, and they built a lot of rationale around why that's the right thing to do. Meta, in its AI development early on, made a very different strategic choice, which was to open source its models. And they said, we're going to develop these llama models, but we're going to make them available. And in fact, there are just an uncountable number of open source AI models where people have done the development, and for their own business reasons, or just because they're researchers, they've made them widely available. And open source, of course, is how the software industry that has just done amazing things and is such a big part of our economy today. Open source software, sharing widely and letting people beat on each other's software and wring out the problems and then build on top of each other. That is how that whole industry has really progressed. And I think the open source advocates in AI view that as an important, like just a hugely important element of innovation. Okay, so here's why this all matters for DeepSeek. DeepSeek did this big advance, and however they did it, what they did in the end was open source their model. So now it's available, and in fact, other companies are taking it and they are running it on their own systems, which are not being run on the systems that belong to a Chinese company that will have to obey if the Chinese Communist Party tells them to provide that data about American search behavior, for example. And so that's an important distinction, right? So like if you go to Perplexity AI and you use their DeepSeek based model, that's you're giving your data to Perplexity. You're not giving it to a Chinese company. So that I wanted to walk down a little bit because I think that becomes a really important distinction and something that we got to keep in mind.
And I think speaking of which, I mean, then there was conversations that TikTok was talking to DeepSeek and all that. OMG, were you part of the whole TikTok thing now that you're not there? Can you give us some tea? Did you sign something?
No. I mean, that was that TikTok discussion that you're talking about, which was about the law that got passed that said that TikTok either had to be divested, so that it wasn't owned by a Chinese company, or it needed to be shut down. A law that, as far as I know, has not been followed. Whatever you think of the law, we're breaking a lot. This administration is breaking a lot of laws. But look, the TikTok issue is really a tough one because free speech is so important in America. I mean, it's just one of the most foundational components of what it means to have the democracy that we have. And there were clear risks in the amount of data that TikTok had access to because so many people were accessing it, were using it just, for so many hours a day. And there's something that I think isn't really that visible to folks, but in the United States, if you're an American company and the government wants you to help with, for example, a criminal investigation, there's a legal process. There's a warrant that's served and you have to respond to that, but that doesn't happen willy-nilly. It doesn't happen ad hoc. It happens through a legal process that's really thought through, and there are people making decisions about whether that level of accessing private data is appropriate for the risk that's being investigated. That's not what happens in China. Under Chinese law, a Chinese company is actually obligated to serve as part of the intelligence collection of the government. And it's just a very different take on how, I mean, their society just runs differently because of different values, right? And so that's something that I think gets lost in that discussion. So I thought it was a very hard decision. In the end, you had to deal with freedom of speech and then this actually real threat of Chinese access to very, very massive, intimate information.
Yeah, even though the Supreme Court said it wasn't a freedom of speech issue, which was interesting. I also think that then some people, which I don't know if this is ignorant to say this, but they were saying, well, the American companies are getting all our data, so why should I care? Which they're a foreign adversary.
Well, I'm worried about American companies getting all of our data.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, but it's not the government, right? It's not the government, right? When Meta or Facebook has a huge amount of information about me, or LinkedIn or anyone, it's not a direct path right into the government. That's been a long tradition. I mean, let's also talk about the fact that when Elon Musk's Doge goes in and gets uncleared, sometimes technically unqualified people direct access to our most sensitive systems with the most sensitive data, that's a whole, that's another massive example of the kinds of threats to our fundamental laws and democracy that's happening right now. But historically, we've been very clear about the government protecting people's private information, and companies, you sign away your rights when you sign up to do those things. But I think there have been real privacy issues just from companies' access
Yeah,
to
and we
data.
saw that as some of these executives went to and spoke in front of Congress how many years ago, right? And the questions and why hasn't anyone done anything, right? When in the social media era. But
Yeah.
now we're seeing it with AI again, as you mentioned, on steroids. And so are we going to let that happen again? And of course, people mention the oligarchy and how all these tech execs are cozying up now to President Trump. Obviously, we have Elon Musk, who was not voted in, just doing his thing. It's concerning, including in an industry that we need to figure this out, and we will lose our leadership in it, right? There's so many other countries that are leading the way and figuring out
Yeah.
ways to do it properly. Are you as worried as I am right now? Or like, should we be worried?
Um, Look, I think these were hard issues to work on when we were working constructively, working with the industry, because these are things that we actually have to tackle together. You can't just make up answers that don't make sense, right? We were on a path to try to craft some practical solutions, some of which were voluntary on the side of industry, and some of which were regulatory. But that was yesterday. The world we're in today is one that, for all the reasons that you mentioned, I think uh, really is concerning, and it's going to require our action to make sure that we get it back on a sensible path. But I want to come to the thing you said, because I just think what you said was so important. Look, I mean, we all grew up in this country in a time in which we just took for granted what American leadership meant around the world. And that's what we are giving up today in a way that I think is very deeply dangerous and damaging. Yes, when you pull funding for projects, someone who's in the middle of a clinical trial is in a dangerous position. So the immediate harms, we're talking about that. I think people are seeing that they're horrible. But when you pull back from engagement with Europe and take on, just sort of repeat Putin's lies about Ukraine, when you undermine our science and technology base, which lays the foundation for the future of AI, but every other scientific and technical area, that provides the data that allows us to get a weather forecast or to know what chemicals are dangerous so that we can regulate and get people's drinking water to be safe. When you undermine those things, what we are doing is feeding leadership to China and to other parts of the world. And the problem with that is other countries don't share our values. And we can disagree about a lot of things. We do disagree about a lot of things. I think we could maybe all agree that we don't want to live in a future that's shaped by AI technologies that have been driven by authoritarian regimes like China's. And that's, if we don't get this right, that's what's at stake.
That's very well said. I mean, I think this 500 billion investment, it was seen as, you see, oh, there's investment in AI. But again, it just feels like the things that people are talking about now that I hear people care about. One is definitely the deep fake issue. I mean, Scarlett Johansson raises it all the
Yeah.
time. By the way, were you working with Scarlett Johansson at all? Did she try to talk to you?
We had a whole team. We and the Gender Policy
Yes.
Council at the White House were teamed up on exactly this issue. And let me back up. When generative AI broke on the scene, everyone said, well, here are all the possible things that
Yeah.
could go wrong, all the possible risks. And we kept trying to figure out what we thought were going to be the first actual harms, like what was really going to break in the world. And that is it, the use of deepfake technology to generate these horrible fake nudes. I mean, they're ruining kids' lives. They're targeting women and girls and people who are queer. It's just not okay. And so it's so important that people were speaking out about that. And the work we were able to do on that was pushing, again, Congress tried, did not get any legislation done. So we were able to work with the industry to get a few small but immediate steps. Just really simple things like payment processors. If someone's going to go to a generative AI site to generate a deep fake nude and use it in this abusive way, payment processors have terms of use that say you can't use our payment system to do, these kinds of bad activities. but they weren't enforcing it, but they stepped up then to go enforce it. So, these are little things, but they start pinching down this horrible sort of cancerous problem that had
Yeah, I
erupted.
think there's that. I mean, I think that a lot of the politicians stepped up because obviously it would impact them during the election. I mean, we just saw there's a video being
Yeah.
shared of Elon is it Elon licking Trump's toes or something, or someone licking
Oh
Trump licking
God.
Elon's toes? It's the other way
Uh,
around. I can't even keep up.
yeah. No, no, no. I saw it.
Very
I can't
creepy.
unsee it.
I'm sorry
It's
for putting that
just
in your head.
creepy,
You haven't seen
creepy,
it.
creepy. Yes.
And I mean, but this is an issue that's impacting all
I
of us. It
saw it.
doesn't need to be
Ugh.
a nude, obviously, to be problematic. And I think it's this idea of not really knowing or understanding what's real and what's not. And how do we make sure that is managed? Because it can ruin people's lives. And also it can ruin democracy, right? It's an attack on democracy.
Yeah. No, you're really right. And, at the end of the day, what I worry the most about is that reality is getting distorted and we already have come to this point where I think we're all concerned that we don't have a common basis of fact. And now this I think allows us to each spin off into our own fictional, universe. So I think we've got some real work to do. I got to tell you, I mean, so we're having a really gloomy conversation. So
And I'm
we
an
should also
optimistic
talk.
person. I just want to get clear.
Me too.
I guess where do you see that balance in? And again, the problem is
Yeah.
with this administration, it's questionable between the responsibility of the company versus the government, and also federally versus, I guess, state by state.
Yeah. Yeah. No, look, first of all, the states have a huge role. And because Congress is not moving on legislation and because it's not only is this administration not clear what they're going to do to make AI work, they're undercutting a lot of what we need to get it on the right track. So I think the states will be important. And of course, that creates more and more confusion for the industry because now you got, 50 jurisdictions. And so I don't think it's optimal in a lot of ways, but they are going to be really important. And look, I mean, I think there's sort of this oversimplified notion that if the government doesn't do anything, then, whatever happens, the markets will sort it all out. Well, I got to tell you something. When you have this degree of chaos and these illegal and unconstitutional activities that are creating such instability and the threat of tariffs and the destruction of our relationship with allies around the world, all of that is terrible for business, right? Like that's the worst thing you could do for American competitiveness. So the whole thing just needs to get back on track. And I think the sooner that people can raise their voices and make it clear that breaking our country is not okay, the faster we can get back to building.
How do you get out of that chaotic doom or gloom conversation? Because again, I'm in this space. One, I love early adoption. I love disruption. And I love being a woman in spaces that typically we wouldn't be, and bringing our voices. It's important. Clearly, I mean, you're at another level. I will be here as my curious self. And so that is exciting to me. Obviously, there's a huge excitement. There are real questions at stake, I guess. So how do we get out of that, what feels like a gloom or doom conversation?
Well, I think we all have to take action. And it starts with things that are as straightforward as contacting your elected members of Congress. And I've had people say to me, mine are Democrats. And I'm like, good, they need to be backed up, right? So get in touch and tell people what you're seeing and what you're concerned about. Support the organizations that you think are working on the issues that you really care about. I mean, I got nothing new or exciting to say, but that kind of basic block and tackling is really, really important. And then, to speak to the optimist that's in both of us. And I think that's one of the most American characteristics you can imagine, right? Is optimism about the future. But here's why I think it's so important and so worthwhile to do the work to get back on track and then get AI. I want AI to be a trusted, trustworthy technology. First, so it doesn't harm us in all the ways that we've been talking about. But again, if you can build a stable platform with a technology that you can count on, then we can go to the stars. And what I mean by going to the stars think about this. There are thousands of diseases that we know exist, for which we have no medical treatment. We do not know how to treat them. And every year we approve about 30 new drugs. It's so incredibly hard. It takes decades and many, many billions of dollars to just figure out one drug. Well, AI could actually be part of dramatically transforming that. People can imagine a future, and I can start to see how it's possible that instead of decades to generate a new drug, that we could do that in months. Think about what that would mean. I have daughters in their 20s. Well, I would love for them to grow old and never worry that they would have Alzheimer's that can't be
Yeah.
treated, right? Can you imagine that future? That would be
Yeah.
amazing.
And
Well,
also my
so
hope is in a data-driven future, there's less question. And skepticism, although skepticism is healthy, but we can actually look at the data and numbers and come to solutions more quickly. So I agree. That's where the real innovation and advancements are that we're not talking about as much.
yep, exactly. And those require look, this country does all kinds of big things. We always have, we still are, but they don't happen just because an entrepreneur rolled out of bed. I mean, I know I'm saying that right here from Palo Alto where that is gospel, but let me tell you, it's more complicated than that. They happen because public and private do what they both have to do. So if we're going to get to this future with medicines that completely change the diseases that we think are impossible today, it's going to happen because of researchers in universities. It's going to happen because of companies, but it is also going to happen because FDA comes up with a different way to approve drugs that keeps us all safe, but actually allows us to solve more problems, right? And so that's what I get excited about is I want to do really big things. I'm glad people are going to do all the little things. I want more business productivity. The market's going to go make that happen. I want better drugs faster. I want our kids to not have these horrible gaps in their educational outcomes. I want to have a better weather forecast that reaches every American. All of those big things are going to take us all, public and private, all pulling together.
So with that, what countries are doing it right? Are there countries that I mean, and from what I know, this more, I always think of UK. For some reason, UK these days, maybe in other parts of UK, not as much ahead, but with AI, a lot of people have talked about, what they're doing around ethics or maybe the balance with regulation, or is it somewhere else that I'm not seeing or know about?
Well, look, different parts of the world have different capability. I mean, one of the UK's great gifts is that they have DeepMind, which is now part of Google, but just amazing research that's going to be part of some of these huge stories in the future. So there's talent and capability and things to contribute to the global good, in fact, in all parts of the world. But let me tell you something. China has an authoritarian regime that controls the lives of millions of Uyghurs and other Turkic Muslims using advanced AI technology. Like, that is not the model. That is not the model that we need the world to follow. And Europe has a long history of being so cautious about new technology that they regulate first and then sort of let's see what happens. And I thought, they're trying to be not as regulation driven and to open up more innovation, but I think that's actually, a slow process there. So again, look, the reason America is still the essential country, the essential nation in the world is we have so much of what the future needs. We've got that optimism. We have the technological capacity. We have the markets. We have, ambitions that are just completely unbounded, right? Like, that's the most American thing in the world. And that's why I want to make sure that we don't see this important leadership role that we
I'm
have.
bringing it back here. You're not even working still in administration. You're bringing, I love it. So, with that,
I still
no,
care
of
about this
course. No,
country.
I
I
mean,
never stop caring about
I'm
that.
Canadian, but I still live here, and I want to see us continue to have that innovation and work well and feel proud about what we're doing. So with that, a lot feels out of the public's control right now, and I do want to get to jobs because it's deep fakes, and I think jobs is another big thing, very big fear. So how can the public feel like they have a semblance of control over AI's impact on their lives right now when so much feels out of control?
Yeah. Yeah, look, I think that is the central issue, right? Is all the conversation about AI is about the technology. It's the people that matter. And it's actually people who are deciding what kinds of AI systems to build and how to use them and where the biggest business opportunities are. Ultimately, it's all of us people that are going to decide what we want, what we will and won't tolerate. That's what policy is making those choices. And so I want to get the human beings back in the mix. Like we need to be in the driver's seat. And so many people I talk to just feel like AI is inevitable and it's being done to them. So I think you're just right on the right topic. So like, what do we do about it? So really practical things. So number one, if I think a lot of people are experimenting with AI, trying this chatbot or the other and swapping notes about what they like and what works. So if you aren't doing that, get out and try it. And, uh, you know, think about using those chatbots to explore and to ideate and to brainstorm. Do not think about them as gospel and this is the truth and you're done. Follow the links to the references and go, ground yourself in facts. But I think it's really helpful to just see what the capability is like. So go out and experiment and engage. And then also, as we go through, we talked about this, but as we go through our daily life, AI is getting turned on us, right? Like, so when you get that mortgage from your bank or when you see an ad that's popping up or something in your social media feed, or if you're in a hospital setting, there's so many settings where the information that's coming at you or the choice that's being offered to you is being driven by AI. And I think just being aware of that and watching and thinking about how much that system knows about you to target you in that way. I mean, I think just being conscious of those things is part of being a smart citizen in a world where AI is really
Yeah, I
everywhere.
say it's this new skill we need to evolve into, right? Or a new type of intelligence. And this idea that, of course, we want our government and companies to be doing the right thing. That is the hope. But it's also up to each of us to choose how we want to live our lives, right? And we need to be active in that. And if anything, a lot of people are like, what more work? We're all tired and burnt out, But again, it's like looking at the glass half full, the optimism, like, okay, taking the power back, which I think is really important. But I do believe in the balance, as you mentioned. And, you know, as we mentioned, it's evolving fast AI. So there's always tension between regulation, innovation, ethics, personal accountability. What's the key to getting that balance right? Where do you see that going?
Yeah. Look, there's no grand theory. This is experimental, right? And so it's every day. And to your point, if let's get practical, right? Like if you're using a tool and you think you don't like the way the AI chatbot's working, stop using it. If you're using a tool and it creeps you out how much it seems to know about you and how much private information it seems to have about you, stop using it. Complain to the company. Like you should take action rather than feeling victimized, I think, by it. And similarly, look, there's an open request from the Trump White House right now for comments on AI policy. So look, the door's open. Go to the White House and tell them what you think is important for the country to do. Um, Engaging and getting your perspective into the mix, I think, is always really, really important. And that's the whole point of
Yeah.
democracy,
And
right?
the hope
Let's
is
do
there's
it.
more people that have these thoughts that also enter these companies, right? And then call those companies forth,
Yeah.
or then they get fired and then they become whistleblowers. So we're
No, no, no. I mean, but I think that's really important. I have a daughter who's 26 and studied computer science, and I watch the kids in that generation. They want to do good things and the right thing, and I think they're going to make a huge difference.
so we're already seeing
That's so important.
shifts in jobs because of AI. I mean, every day I hear something, not just in the news, but actually behind the scenes too. Someone I go to the gym with, his dad, even just an engineer, got fired because of AI, right? So this brings us to the possibility of universal basic income. Do you think this is going to be a thing? Was this even discussed at the White House as a potential solution? Is this the future?
To me, universal basic income is part of this fantasy about a future where AI makes us all so productive that we have everything we could possibly want and there's no work for anyone. So like, I feel like I'm reading a science fiction novel or I feel like I'm in a freshman dorm at 2 in the morning But like, let me tell you what's happening in the real world. This is, first of all, it's like every other wave of technology, right? Whether it was automation on the factory floor, it was very, very similar. We all want the same thing. What we want is for every worker to be able to use AI so that they can do more and then earn more, right? Like that's the great thing that we want to see happen. The thing that we don't want to see happen is that it dehumanizes work, that it hollows out the job, or it just demolishes so many jobs so quickly that people can't jump into the next thing where they can do more and earn more, right? And right now I'm seeing both of those things happen. I know people who are so much more productive in their work because they're using AI tools. A friend of mine runs a nonprofit. Yeah, so you must do that all the time, right? So that's great. But I also know people whose job, we did a lot of work with folks who were we heard such horror stories about how companies are surveilling their workers using AI. So, like you're doing customer support and every keystroke, every word you say to a customer is being monitored and you're being judged and you're being coached to do it a different way, even though you're talking to people in your community, in your language, like you're providing the human touch and the machine is correcting you to do it worse. Right. Like, so that like that's not going to work. And we got to find a way to just, this idea that people are just, cogs in a machine and you just want to get as much work out of them as you can. And it's all about efficiency without the human element. Like, what is the point of that? I just don't get it. But that's what I think the dark future is that we're all trying to avoid. And if we can get it right, we can have real boosts. Tell me how you use it. Like, how do you use AI in your work all the
Even
time?
for some of these questions, no. It's true. For me, it's a thought partner because I work so much alone and my brain can only do so much. And I just need input and validation that I'm not crazy sometimes. And maybe this is a bit of like my personal being a woman and having, overly questioning myself all the time. But it's really helped give me that confidence in terms of the work I'm doing. And also for me as a small business owner, you need to get to no or yes quickly to move on to the next thing. And so it helps me craft my messaging to potential clients or brands to get to the no or yes more quickly. Also, I can't necessarily hire a project manager, a deck creator, all this stuff that typically bigger companies and agencies have. So I'm able though to, because I have the ideas, in the end, I still have the ideas, get to that presentation mode so much more quickly for less money. And so for me, my productivity has gone way up and it has helped boost my confidence. And, I see it and I can't wait till I could just literally, like, I have someone I just tell to create social posts or this, that. Like, I can't wait till that's AI. We're like, hey, here's the footage. I want it to look like this, and that. Like, can you create it and send it back the asset to me and then post it? Like, I want to wake up like creator in a box, basically. That's what I'm looking at. So that's how it helps me personally. And even therapy wise, I have a therapist, but in between, there's a lot of venting.
Well, what I love about that is it's all driven by the human thing that you want to do, whether it's the work thing you want to do or the way you're feeling about something. And so that's still the point of the whole exercise. And that's exactly
But
what you want.
my hope is, when people see that, but it is scary, I think, because I know how many people don't have that entrepreneurial mindset and they are used to what they've had. And I do think we're in for a very harsh rude awakening right now, which is why for me, personal growth, self-awareness, and working on yourself and your value system so you could be aligning with the things that you care about and love are really important. So, and that's human, right?
It's human. And if AI can help you get all the things in life that you have to get done so that you can do those things, that's perfect,
and it's going to force people to question, unfortunately, what they do and find new things. But we've seen these changes in the past, industrialization, like we're living through history, as you know. It's tougher now because this is happening much more quickly. And which is why we need leadership to bring that optimism and hope and education to people who don't know it. So more people are learning, and investment.
And investment, because we have gotten through these big changes in the past, but we left a lot of blood on the floor. It was brutal, and we did not do a great job helping people with the
Yep.
transition when, manufacturing lines got automated, right? And we have got to do better. And if we want to get to the rosy future that we're imagining, it's not going to happen by accident. It's not going to happen just by sort of waiting to see what happens. It's going to happen because we really are thoughtful about how jobs can be upskilled and how people can get the skills that they need to move to the next better thing. That when it works, it's great. So we got to make sure we get that
Yeah.
worked out.
And I do want to just, we're going to move ahead. We're almost there. But I actually reported about this recently in my newsletter, how TikTok and Meta, well, they've been making headlines for restructuring their trust and safety divisions. And I think we're going to see this across the board. So with that, and we're talking about AI replacing humans, et cetera, like, do you see AI replacing human moderation in this space? And what are the implications of that?
Listen, to me, this is just like some of the other things we've been talking about. I have seen so many hard problems where you try to do it manually and it's sort of meh. Like you can't really keep up with it manually. You try to have a machine do it and it's meh. It's still not great. And it's actually wrong in it's not great in a different way. And when you combine the human and the machine and that people are able to use the automation and the efficiency and the scale of the technology, but they're driving, right? And they understand the human element, for example, in content moderation, that's where I have greater optimism. And I think that, you can really make
Yeah,
progress.
I do too. I worry the leadership of those companies don't,
That's a
they're
different
not seeing
story,
the
right?
nuance. They're not trying to build an unbiased space necessarily. I haven't seen it. Have you seen it? Am I missing anything? Have you seen companies that you feel like are doing it right?
I think that it varies across companies. And I think what I have seen, look, I mean, we've been talking about the government half of my professional life. The other half of my professional life is here in Silicon Valley. It was a decade in venture capital working on a few companies. And I started a nonprofit. And what really strikes me is that whatever context you're in, people have a worldview that is shaped by the fact that they're in business or the fact that they're policymakers or, whatever it is that they do. And it's very hard when if you're at Meta or Facebook in the early years and you're trying to drive engagement, that just seems like the exact right thing to do. And it's hard to see the dark side of what comes with that. And when people tell you about the dark side, it's hard to hear them criticize the thing that you're building that you think is so good for humanity. So I have a little bit of sympathy, but at the end of the day, these are not just companies' problems. They're our problems as a country, as a society, as people. And we're just at a point where it's got to get dealt
So
with.
where do you see, looking forward, AI heading over the next 4 years under this administration?
Well, I think under this administration is really the great unknown. I still have hope that we will correct the problems, the crisis that they are moving us into right now with illegal actions and violations of the Constitution. I mean, we're just in a very dangerous place for the country. With respect to AI and the future that we could have, what it's doing is undermining our capacity as a nation to provide the research foundation, to provide the smart ways of using AI across government that are deeply ethical, preserve privacy, but actually do the country's work more effectively. That's what we need to be getting on with. And if we can do that, I think the prospects are really bright. We can maintain and strengthen American leadership in the world. But the track we're on right now requires correction. It's not going to work for AI. More importantly, it's not going to work for the future of the country.
So what are we each supposed to do? I mean, we've kind of talked about this. So if the government, the next 4 years, individually.
Well, everyone's got to do their own piece of the puzzle. And it really does start with things as basic, find out what's going on and form an opinion. And then share that opinion with your member of Congress. Tell them that they're doing a good job and they got to stand up for the Constitution, or tell them if they're not doing that they better, or they won't be your member of Congress anymore. But people, it's a time to speak out and to support the organizations that are fighting for the things you really
And
believe
now
in.
that you're a free agent, and we appreciate you being so honest, I could have even dug deeper, but so you are being very transparent on this. And I know you didn't have the ability to previously. So what is next for you? What are you most excited about?
The thing that I still get out of bed for every single morning is it's always been the same for me is I just want to do the work that makes tomorrow better than today. That's the only thing that's interesting to me. And it's so worthwhile. And after you've done this, I started doing that when my hair was black. Now that my hair is white, I've gotten to see a bunch of things happen in the world that are much better because of something I got to make a small contribution to. So that's what I am still looking for. And today we've got to deal with this immediate crisis. But again, the reason is I just know what this country can do when we pull together and we go big. And there's so much potential if we can get AI back on a good track and use it to do big things. That's what it's all about.
And finally, what is the one go-to AI tool you use or the way you like using AI? A little AI hack from you since you're such an expert.
Oh, I think there are many people who are experimenting even more widely than I am. I've been trying different chatbots and just sort of seeing, they all come up with things that are goofy or erroneous. Some are better at helping me sort of dig in and find the source material behind something I get interested in. I was trying to find a story from 1957 that I had read in some obscure journal, a number of years ago. Crazy story about these researchers. They lugged their radio equipment up to the roof of a cafeteria because the world's first satellite Sputnik was flying by. It's actually the story that's the very beginning of how we got GPS. I think it's such a cool story. And, that one I put into Perplexity AI as it happens. And within 3 queries, it found me this obscure story and fleshed out the little bit that I remembered. So, I think those are just sort of fun and magical moments that sort of you realize that there's a much more powerful capability and we can use it for all kinds of
Well,
things.
Arati Prabhakar, thank you so much. We've taken so much of your time. I so appreciate it. I'm happy that we got you, not your AI of the future. In the future, this will be like an exclusive interview, right? So I so appreciate you and for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Shira. I'm so glad you're doing this. It's such an important topic.
What a great conversation to get us going on the AI download. If you want to keep up with what Arati is working on next, make sure to follow her on LinkedIn. She is always sharing really sharp, insightful takes on AI and innovation. I'll drop the link in the show notes. And a big thank you, of course, to Highlighter for sponsoring our series. Want to dive deeper? Check out the AI Download Collection, where we've curated the top highlights from this episode's biggest AI stories. Just click the Highlighter link in our show notes to explore more. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share. That's how we keep doing this. You know the drill. We've got a lot more coming your way, so see you next time on the AI Download.